Now, Sunday wasn't just about the Cowboys having an all-time horrible defense against the Ravens. We had some other surprises here. Now, a lot of 2-0 teams, they've had their first loss of the season. It's still early, no big deal, but a little bit of a surprise here. I'm going to start with the Bucks and Broncos. This one, we were just talking about it. Like, I don't understand like what even happened in this game. I mean, the Bucks offense looked like they picked up where they did last year. I mean, left off last year. Looked like they were fine. They came in this game 26-7, lose to the Broncos. That defense, they showed up. Bo Nix, he finally was able to be a competent quarterback. Broncos defense on that low line, man, destroyed them. 7 sacks for Baker. I mean, not ideal for your quarterback, for your franchise quarterback that you just gave $100 million. So, yeah, to me, that's probably the biggest surprise. I mean, I know the Texans, Vikings, that might be another one just based on the score. But yeah, to me, Bucks Broncos probably the biggest surprise of this past Sunday.
Yeah, I think if I had to pick a biggest surprise, it'd be Bucks Broncos. Maybe it'd be our super secret last one that we'll include at the end of the segment. But Bucks Broncos is probably the biggest one. Turning on the game and Bo Nix having a rushing touchdown and the Broncos winning 26-7 against a Bucks team that struggled a little bit against the Lions. But in the end, came out with a victory. Same problems. Baker was on the ground the whole game, so that line's got to get it together. But the Broncos, they get their first win and it looks good. It does not look like one that you can kind of question or call it a fluke or throw it up to a weird call at the end. They dominated the Bucks throughout the whole game, so I think that one was pretty big. Since you mentioned it, I'll just move over to Texans Vikings. This one, I think Terrence and I, we both picked the Vikings. So I'm not going to say that the Vikings winning this game is the most shocking result of the 2-0 teams that would end up falling. But the Texans losing specifically 34-7 is really bad. And it's not something that I would have expected. I expected Sam Darnold to get out and score a lot. I just kind of would have expected, even without Joe Mixon, for the Texans to answer. But the Texans, they let C.J. Stroud get sacked too much. They turned the ball over. They had a drive where it was like 3rd and 4, and then 3 straight false starts made it 3rd and 19. And then another drive again where they were demolished by an illegal formation. And it's just the Texans. They're younger. They've got a younger head coach. I'm sure he knows how to coach football. He did great last year. But the Texans beat themselves a little bit in this one. The Vikings definitely were going to score and keep pace, but the Texans could have at least fought back. But with the sacks, the picks, and then the onslaught of penalties, the Texans kicked themselves out of this game. I'm sure they're going to want Joe Mixon back, but even with Joe Mixon in the game, you gotta play a little more discipline than that. Texans fall to 2-1. Vikings move up to 3-0, and Sam Darnold looks like an MVP frontrunner.
Yeah, and then that's a funny statement to hear when you hear it somebody say it for the first time. But I mean, realistically, I can't even complain. 4 touchdowns and just under 200 yards. I mean, when you look at it, Texans just slightly outgained the Vikings, but you said it: the sacks, the penalties, the turnovers, the complete lack of a running game because of Joe Mixon being out. And look, I knew that would be a big deal, and it's kind of why last week we were talking about this game. We did pick the Vikings, but man, I didn't think it would be that bad. They pretty much put the entire thing on the passing game there, and did not come out with the win there. Not even close. Chargers game, that one, it's not super surprising, I guess. It is like these are 2-0 teams. Obviously, you're expecting a Chargers offense who lost a lot of their key pieces in the offseason, but gained some key pieces clearly. They've been playing well. You had the Steelers defense that have been playing very well. Now you were expecting, all right, somebody's got to kind of give there. And even with the Justin Herbert injury, obviously the Chargers, they gave. And the Steelers, they go to 3-0, as I mentioned before. They lead the AFC North by 2 games, even with the Bengals if they win tonight. So Steelers, I mean, they got a great start. Was not expecting that on the backs of their defense and Justin Fields playing a pretty good tight game.
Steelers came out and handled business. I mean, Mike Tomlin, I joked a lot about his devil magic. At this point of the season, I think that he just really has locked down with his defense, and they're starting to get comfortable with Justin Fields. Justin Fields got himself a rushing touchdown. They passed well. He didn't really turn it over too much. Chargers, whose defense has been pretty good, although they did play the Raiders and Panthers, who ironically we will talk about jointly together. But the Chargers weren't able to keep the defense going. They actually did for a while, looked pretty good, and then boom, Steelers had 20 points and the game's over. So this went from a bit of a stalemate to the Steelers finding their rhythm to break through the ice and come out with a 3-0 record. The Chargers, they're going to be 2-1. Obviously, they're in a bit of a tough division by mercy of being in a division with the Chiefs. But they still look good. This one has some stuff that they have definitely to look past. Joey Bosa and Justin Herbert both getting injured is not super great, but I'm sure the Chargers are going to hope they can get them back in and keep Jim Harbaugh's tenure being a successful one to start the season. Now from here we have the 40 points per game Saints falling mightily, and the maybe 20-ish points per game Eagles also falling mightily. But however, the Eagles come out on top, 15-12, and a very interesting score. This one was nothing for a while, and these two teams just had a defensive struggle. They couldn't really get anything going, and then all of a sudden, the Eagles get a massive run. I think it's like 65 yards from Saquon Barkley. He gets a touchdown. Saints realize, all right, we can't park the bus. This isn't a soccer game. We got to keep the gas going. They try to come back in, make it a bit of a fight, and then just as you think maybe the Saints are gonna kind of lock in and take this one. Obviously, Terrence and I both picked the Saints. Dallas Goedert gets a huge play. Saints barely able to get him down, but that doesn't really matter. It leads to another Saquon strike. Eagles end up with 15 points. Saints are going to need, because of the way they scored with the field goal and the touchdown and the way the scores were at, they needed a 2-point conversion on their first touchdown. They didn't get it. So then, that's okay. You're going to get the ball back, and you just need to get it downfield and get it within Blake Groupie's range. And they do not. Derek Carr throws a pick immediately to Reed Shepard, and that is the end of that one. Eagles escape to get themselves a 2-1 record. Saints fall to a 2-1 record in an unfortunate way. Honestly, for me though, I don't want to continue to spread hatred on the Eagles franchise, and obviously as a Panthers fan, I'm nowhere near the Saints' biggest fan. But what I get out of this is honestly that the Saints still look like good. Like this is better for the Saints, I think, than the Eagles. And I know they lost. I'm not going to give any moral victories. At the end of the day, the Eagles are, this is good. They needed to come out with this 2-1 record, especially after the way the Falcons game went. But for the Saints, you're falling to 2-1. The Eagles are rising to 2-1. I think the Saints to hold that offense down and force that many mistakes was good. They do need to look at their offense, right? You had super high flying offense for 2 weeks, and then boom, you must drop 12 points against an Eagles defense that hasn't really been like amazing, right? Like the Packers cut them up down in Brazil last week. Kirk Cousins made easy work of them on the last drive. So definitely impressed by the Eagles defense to come in and lock up the Saints, especially to get that pick at the end. But I do think the Saints don't have too much to panic about in this one. But if this happens again, then I think the Saints' run has fallen, and it's time to start to panic a little bit, right? Because you put up 40, now you're going to put up 12. If you can't find a middle ground next week and get another win, it might be time to worry a little bit.
Yeah, no, this is kind of funny. When you look at the stats, like if you didn't watch the game, you just look at the box score. It's like, all right, Eagles clearly dominated this game offensively, right? I mean, 460. I mean, they literally doubled the they literally doubled the Saints offensively, right? Doubled and more. But it only ended up 15-12, and mainly because of turnovers and stupid decisions. So, look, this is just kind of the NFL now where you get these analytics and, if it's 4 from this, 4 from that, go for it. But they had multiple times where they went for it, where they probably shouldn't have, screwed them out of some points possibly. They had a bad fumble. You had a bad interception in the red zone by Jalen Hurts. I mean, so you take out the stupid plays. The Eagles really dominated this game, to be honest, because the Saints didn't really get anything going for the most part. Outside of that one scoring, touchdown drive, right? When you look at it, the Eagles really should have been up way more. But when you're watching the game, I mean, it just didn't feel like it. I mean, you looked at, I think at the end of the third quarter, it was like, it was still 3-0 Saints, but the Saints had, I think, 98 yards of offense, where the Eagles had like 280 or something. I mean, it was in that ballpark, 300 and 100. It didn't feel like that. So I mean, it just felt like one of those kind of Steeler games where they make your team play down to the competition, at least offensively. But the Eagles could move the ball. They just made stupid decisions, had mistakes. But once they stopped making those mistakes, it was clear the Saints didn't have enough on defense. So big game for the Eagles, huge win for them. They moved to 2-1. Obviously, they'll be leading the division as of now, unless Washington. They'll be tied with them if they win tonight. But Saints, on the other hand, like you said, I wouldn't panic. But obviously, your defense was not good enough. I mean, this is probably another deceiving final score, 15-12. You only allowed 15 points, sure. But defense clearly was not good enough in this one. Saquon ran all over you. And outside of stupid plays, Jalen Hurts was throwing the ball pretty well. So I wouldn't panic, but this is clearly a far cry from the first 2 weeks, as well as the Panthers winning a game. That is a far cry from what we've seen over the past 5-6 years. So Andy Dalton came in, and I said it last week. He's probably going to be better by default just because he doesn't have, the weight of the world on his shoulders as a number one pick. He's obviously the veteran backup. He's more confident. He's been in the league for, since 2011. He came in back with Cam. I expected him to come in, play well, kind of settle things down. I didn't expect us to win. And I definitely didn't expect Andy Dalton to go out there and be the only QB this year. As you've eloquently put it, 300 yards, 3 touchdowns in the game. Even your boy Sam Darnold hadn't done that. So, hey, I'll give Andy Dalton all the credit in the world. Do I think we're going to go to the playoffs? No. I think this team still has a lot of issues. Bryce Young obviously was an issue, but that can't be the only reason you let up 40 points to a Saints team, right? If we criticize the Cowboys defense, we can do the same for our defense. I think after what Antonio Pierce said about guys making business decisions, I feel like the Raiders, they got a lot of problems too.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to have a Panthers win. I'm super happy to have Andy Dalton come in and score 300 yards, 319 specifically, and 3 touchdowns, and the dot to Adam Thielen for the 31-yard touchdown, to see Deontay Johnson score, Miles Sanders being productive, Chuba Hubbard being massively productive, right? We talked about Derrick Henry racking up 150 yards. Chuba Hubbard got up 114, which is, for Panthers numbers, is really, really high for for recent history. Deontay Johnson, as a matter of fact, 122 receiving yards. Just a great connection with Andy Dalton. Could not be happier as a Panthers fan, right? It's the Raiders. It's not like we just went out and beat the Chiefs or the Ravens or or the Sam Darnold Vikings, I guess, for this year's standards. But the Raiders did just beat the Ravens, so I'm gonna hold that. Obviously, Antonio Pierce was not happy with some of the decisions that defensive players made, so they've got some issues there too. But to be up 21-7 at halftime and actually genuinely just feel like we got this, we actually can hold on. We allowed them to score 15 in the fourth, which isn't great, but obviously based on our previous 2 weeks, I think we know that we've got some defensive issues that we need to work out and iron out. I don't think we're a playoff team, but I do think with Andy Dalton here that we could win a few games. Maybe we don't need to. Maybe we win games and we get a worse pick. I don't know. Honestly, it's just kind of happy to win a few games. And if we can win enough to be competitive, actually in the NFC South and make some moves there and be a desirable destination to go to, that also helps. So there's things like that factor in. And if somehow Andy Dalton, with 2 less games than most of his competition, keeps this up and remains an MVP candidate himself, I'd be happy. So I do like Bryce Young. I hope he's able to develop under Andy this season. I hope that we just play Andy and let Bryce kind of relax, take some weight off his shoulders, take some time to learn, take some time to get a feel for the NFL. Let Andy Dalton lead us to whatever he does. He doesn't really have that much to lose. So I'm happy with this one. We put up 36 points. I can't be upset about that one at all.